What should be the relationship between local law enforcement and federal immigration services? This question that sets the future of the nearly 61,000 undocumented immigrants living in Westchester County has sparked debate in this 2017 election race. That is Marco Antonio Huete, after being hit by a car while biking to work in Key West. And that is a Monroe County sheriff called to the scene who asked for his immigration status before offering immediate medical care.
English? No, you speak Spanish? All right. You got ID? Passport?
The police did not charge the driver, and when Huete was sent to the hospital, immigration agents showed up to the scene to detain him.
So why don't you have any legal documents? 16 years you've been here in the United States, and you haven't bothered to do anything to get anything. All right. 2, can you also notify the city, see if they can have a unit en route and contact Border Patrol?
Both incidents resulted in local police collaborating with immigration federal agents. These situations are very common and likely to keep happening across the United States. This because of President Trump's new deportation rules, allowing undocumented immigrants to be deported no matter if they have a criminal record or not. As a result, Westchester County legislators decided to take action.
The Immigration Protection Act came up because after the Trump inauguration, there was a lot of confusion in a lot of our communities about what the change in federal immigration laws were going to mean here at the local level. In doing some research, we discovered that the county had an executive order from 2006, and we liked some of the protections that were built into that. Some of the things had to be changed, though, because state and federal law had changed since 2006. So we sort of put those two things together, and that was the beginning of the Immigration Protection Act.
So what exactly is the Immigrant Protection Act? Karen Anderson is one of the attorneys who helped draft the law in conjunction with the county commissioners. She uses an example to explain how the Immigrant Protection Act would have been enforced.
The big concern is that if a person is pulled over by the police and they don't have an ID, they don't have an ID and they may be afraid to interact with the police. They may be detained simply to get their identity, and they go through a process called booking. And as soon as that happens, even if they're innocent of any crime, their information is shared with the civil immigration authorities. There's nothing stopping that now in this county.
And the Immigration Protection Act
the Immigrant Protection Act created clear guidelines for the police to know when they could act, when there was a crime, a criminal investigation, when there was a judicial warrant, or an imminent national security issue. It was clear instances of when the county corrections and county law enforcement could act to communicate with civil enforcement. In other times, when it was necessary, the Immigrant Protection Act would have provided just a simple procedure for the people involved in that process to understand what was happening to them.
On August 7, Westchester Republicans and Democrat legislators passed the first bipartisan bill seeking to protect immigrants in New York State. But soon after, County Executive Rob Astorino vetoed the legislation.
Mr. Astorino, given your vote, or your veto rather, why should any immigrant voter or second-generation voter give you their vote, given your rejection of a bill?
This is about the sanctuary bill that the majority of the legislature wanted to do. That's why the Hispanic Law Enforcement Association and all law enforcement stood with me. Because what this bill was about, it was not about the 99.9% of undocumented immigrants living among us. This was about criminals, those who have committed violent crimes and are sitting in our jail, waiting trial or waiting charges. And this would prohibit, in many ways, first of all, it violated federal law, according to the county attorney. This would prohibit discussions and cooperation between the county, corrections, and law enforcement with the federal authorities.
After the veto, Rob Astorino passed a new executive order on September 20th. But how does this differ from the Immigrant Protection Act? The answer is that it's pretty similar, but the main difference is the language in which it's written. While the Immigrant Protection Act sets specific measures for the interaction of law enforcement with undocumented immigrants, the executive order says police cannot ask for someone's status unless they are required by law or unless they're being investigated for criminal activity. In that case, it will be up to the police officer to cooperate with federal agencies. In addition, another difference is that the Immigrant Protection Act demands a due process, prohibits the use of county resources to create county immigration rates, and perhaps the most obvious difference is that the executive order can be terminated by a new administration, while a law will stay in place.
The example of somebody being pulled over is a really good one because it highlights the differences between the executive order and the Immigrant Protection Act. The reality is, police don't necessarily intend to turn people over to immigration, but the reality is, because of the way data is shared, that if somebody interacts with a police officer, the result can be that their information is quickly shared with the federal immigration authorities, the civil authorities, even if they're innocent of any crime, even if they haven't been stopped for a crime, even if they're not charged with a crime, regardless, the simple fact of that interaction can. And the reality in this county is that county law enforcement is sharing information with federal authorities just based on the fact that somebody's not born in this country. That's what's happening now.
Reno knows that Latino doesn't necessarily mean immigrant, and that immigrant doesn't mean criminal. A very good example is that some well-meaning but misguided election officials would have passed a law that would have exposed the Latino community to crime and violence by inviting felons to Westchester County.
Absolutely. It protects the criminal more than the regular American citizens. When you have criminals have more rights than American citizens in jail, then there is a problem. And that's where the problem is, and that needs to be fixed. We love all of our immigrants, and even the undocumented people. We don't go after them. We don't go targeting them. They are what made this country, and everybody was undocumented at one time here in America.
Right now, what this is just letting people know that we're not going to use your hard-earned tax dollars and our limited county resources to participate in government immigration raids. A lot of people are afraid that the Immigrant Protection Act is being put in place to protect people who break the law. That is not true. As lawmakers, it doesn't make any sense for anyone to pass a law to protect those who break the law.
On September 25th, Westchester County legislators tried and failed to override the veto on the Immigrant Protection Act. However, in this election race, Westchester candidates are still debating on what should be the best course of action for law enforcement interaction with undocumented immigrants.
Given what our current president announced this year, earlier in the year, we felt very strongly that it was time that we really codified what we already had on the books.
The fact of the matter is that nothing has changed, and I would also note that every police department in Westchester County agreed with Astorino's veto, as I do.
What I will do as county executive is to meet with the law enforcement community, meet with the immigrant community, sit down and work out a new executive order that qualifies and satisfies the needs of both of those two groups. And then once I put that executive order in effect, I will ask the Board of Legislators to codify a new law based on that executive order. And I assure you that'll be done within the first month of my administration.
Undocumented immigrants can't vote, but first, second, or third generation of immigrant voters can. On election night, these voters and the rest of the electorate will decide the future of the nearly 61,000 that don't have a voice. For the Local Life Special Election Night coverage, I'm Sheila Navarro.